Talk it up, Jess.
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
Did you know WWE has actually gone through 8 distinct eras where Raw rookies became icons and legends eventually fell? But it leaves us with a question that has aggressively divided wrestling fans for decades. Which WWE era truly the absolute greatest?
I'm the best in the world.
Was it the era that gave us Hulkamania? The era that won the Monday Night Wars? Or the one shattering financial records at this exact moment? And what if we can actually try to rank all of them?
That's simply not possible.
Why not, you stupid bastard?
Look, I know it's tough and it's highly debatable. Trust me, some of these placements are going to make a lot of people furious. By the end of this video, you're either going to smash that subscribe button or you're gonna want to shield powerbomb me to a burning table. To keep things fair, we are judging every single era on 5 strict pillars: the storylines it delivered, the superstar that defined it, the history-shaping moments, the overall business impact, and the glaring flaws that held it back. Let's begin with the era which is close to our heart.
I don't even know if that's PG.
Running from roughly 2008 to 2014, this was the moment WWE shifted gears, trading in the blood and chaos for a family-friendly product aimed at a much broader audience. This era gave us some absolute masterpieces like the legendary Shawn Michaels vs. The Undertaker showdown at WrestleMania and the destructive debut of The Shield. At the center of all were two complete opposite forces, John Cena and CM Punk. Cena became the ultimate real-life superhero for a new generation of kids, while Punk injected a much-needed dose of reality and edge with his iconic pipe bomb promo. Because of this rating, the storyline changed. The grit was replaced with polished, classic good versus evil storyline about overcoming adversity. This completely split the fan base. Older fans desperately missed the unpredictable, raw energy of the past, while a whole new generation embraced the cleaner format. However, this era definitely had its flaws, mostly due to its creative handcuffs. It built massive stars, sure, but it's rarely captured that chaotic, anything can happen, lightning in a bottle that defined wrestling peak year. So where does it land? With its mix of iconic moment, massive mainstream appeal, but ultimately restrictive creative limits, the PG era sits comfortably at the B tier. Welcome to the era of peak television absurdity, where a real-life backstage love triangle turned Edge into the rated R superstar, humiliating him and Lita celebrating a championship victory under the sheets. Yeah, like literally. Craving out its distinct identity from 2002 through 2008, this next period officially started when the wild chaos of the late 90s wore down. WWE faced a massive identity crisis. Their two biggest megastars left the full-time picture. Vince McMahon literally walked into the middle of the ring, looked the locker room in the eyes, and demanded that someone show him ruthless aggression. What followed was arguably the greatest golden age of pure in-ring wrestling the company has ever seen. This era was defined by a legendary influx of young talent, the infamous Ohio Valley Wrestling class of 2002. It gave rise to the foundational pillars of modern industry: a young, terrifying, athletic Brock Lesnar, a trash-talking John Cena in his Doctor of Thugonomic phase, a sleek and dangerous Randy Orton, and the powerhouse, the Animal Batista. The focus shifted to athletic mastery and brutal realism. We got the iconic brand extension, split testing Raw and SmackDown as fiercely separate competitors. SmackDown became an absolute workhorse show, anchored by unmatched technicians like Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, and Edge, putting on weekly in-ring masterclasses. The stories were deeply intense and incredibly physical. Think about the emotional high of Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit celebrating with world titles at the end of WrestleMania 20, or the violent, bloody evolution of Triple H's dominant Evolution stable. It was a perfect bridge, keeping a lot of the mature, gritty edge from the late 90s, but combining it with incredible crisp wrestling mechanics. If there was a drawback, it was that the transition period was bumpy. The first year or two felt a bit lost as the company tried to find its identity post-Attitude Era, but looking at the sheer volume of star it created and the unmatched quality of matches, this era is a masterpiece. For that reason, the Ruthless Aggression Era easily punches its ticket into the tier A.
Ruthless Aggression!
This wasn't just a chapter in wrestling history, it was the Big Bang that triggered WWE's first massive mainstream explosion. Before this, wrestling was a fragmented regional business. This era smashed through those boundaries and turned it into an international phenomena, spanning from 1984 to 1993. At the absolute center of this universe was Hulk Hogan with his bright yellow gear and larger-than-life energy. He became a real-life superhero to millions of kids, but he wasn't carrying the banner alone. The wild, intense Macho Man Randy Savage, the frenetic energy of the Ultimate Warrior, and the mythical towering presence of Andre the Giant. This is where WrestleMania was born, changing sports entertainment forever. Hogan slamming the 500-pound Andre the Giant in front of a packed Silverdome at WrestleMania 3. Now, if we are being completely honest, the in-ring action hasn't aged perfectly. By today's standard, the matches were slow, less technical, and the characters could feel like Saturday morning cartoon come to life. But you cannot minimize what this era achieved. It didn't just entertain people, it built the entire foundation for every single era. Without the roaring crowd of the 80s, we don't get the Attitude Era or anything after it. With its massive cultural footprint, the birth of the modern pay-per-view, and the most recognizable stars in the pop culture history, the Golden Era firmly secured its spot in the 8th year.
And what you gonna do when Hulkamania and the largest...
Remember the iconic Yes moment? This entire era was massively driven by one single name, Daniel Bryan, bursting onto the scene in 2014 before wrapping up in late 2016. The reality era was a wild time where the line between scripted storylines and real-life frustration completely blurred. While John Cena was still the corporate face of the company, Bryan became the undisputed people's champ. His Yes moment wasn't just a storyline, it was literal fan hijacking of the show. When WWE tried to push Bryan aside, the fans legitimately revolted, forcing management hands in real time. It culminated in Bryan's historic win at WrestleMania 30, one of the most emotionally satisfying, fan-driven triumphs in television history. Alongside his legendary rise, we also witnessed the dominant apex of The Shield, proving to everyone that the future of the business was in the incredible safe hands. What made this era so gripping was how it pulled back the curtain. Promos started openly acknowledging internet rumors, crowd backlashes, and actual backstage politics. But the biggest drawback, it was a double-edged sword. When every single storyline tries to be meta and break the fourth wall, the illusion of wrestling can start to crumble. Plus, you can't deny the sheer emotion it generated. For its unmatched authenticity, the empowerment of the audience, and giving us one of the greatest underdog stories of all time, the reality era earns a very respectable spot in the B tier. Stepping into the void from 1993 through the early months of 1997, this era had the impossible task of picking up the pieces after the Golden Era collapsed. With Hulk Hogan gone and the steroids scandal of the early 90s forcing the company to pivot away from the muscle-bound giants, WWE had to completely reinvent itself. They shifted the spotlight to smaller, wildly athletic, and deeply dedicated performers, most notably Bret the Hitman Hart and Shawn Michaels. Suddenly, the product wasn't about cartoon characters' body slamming monster. It was about pure, elite-level athletic showcase. This era gave us some of the absolute greatest technical masterpieces in wrestling history, culminating in the historic 60 minutes Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12 between Bret and Shawn. We also saw evolving character known as The Undertaker. But behind the scenes, the company faced massive financial struggles and brutal cutthroat competition from WCW, who was stealing away their old stars. To cope, creative got desperate. For every incredible Bret Hart masterclass, fans were forced to sit through mind-numbing, goofy gimmick. The audience shrunk significantly, and for a year, wrestling lost its mainstream cool factor completely. The major flaw here was the star inconsistency. It forced WWE to get edgy, creating the perfect pressure cooker that eventually birthed the Attitude Era. Unmatched work ethic during its dark days, the New Generation Era lands firmly in the C tier. If there was ever a time when pro wrestling felt less like a sports entertainment show and more like a lawless pop culture mutiny, this was it, exploding onto television screens in 1997 before finally cooling down in 2002. The Attitude Era was WWE's ultimate gamble, a middle finger to the status quo that completely changed the landscape of cable TV. This wasn't just wrestling, it was a weekly dose of pure, unadulterated adrenaline. Stone Cold Steve Austin driving a beer truck to the ring to hose down his corporate bosses. The Rock electrifying millions with a single lift of an eyebrow. And Mick Foley literally plummeting off the top of a 20-foot steel cage. At the absolute peak of this mountain stood Austin and The Rock, two icons so massive that their fame completely broke out the wrestling bubble, turning them into even to global mainstream gods. What made it an absolute rating juggernaut was the sheer unpredictability of the writing, fueled by a desperate real-life war with rival company WCW, WWE. Throughout the old rulebook, storylines constantly blurred the line between reality and fiction, making rivalries feel intensely personal. You tuned in every single Monday Night Raw because you legitimately felt like anything could happen, and usually it did. The crowd energy was feral, driving television ratings to the heights the industry will likely never see again, with its unmatched cultural grip, unforgettable history-making moments, and a roster packed with the biggest names to ever lace up a pair of boots. The Attitude Era easily breaks the scale. It is, without question, the definitive, undisputed S tier.
Let me tell you something, brother. What you gonna do?
Craving out its narrative between 2016 and 2021, this period took the raw authenticity of the reality era and tried to supercharge it with massive corporate spectacle. WWE finally realized they needed a balance. They could not just ignore what the fans wanted, but they also needed to build a giant, polished, global entertainment machine. This era gave us some absolutely explosive moments that still echo today. We saw the dramatic return of the brand split, giving Raw and SmackDown their own unique identities again. We witnessed the jaw-dropping debut of AJ Styles, a guy fans thought would never step foot in the WWE ring. And most importantly, we witnessed a literal revolution in women's wrestling, spearheaded by Charlotte Flair and the organic, unstoppable rise of Becky Lynch as the Man, which eventually led to the first ever women's main event in WrestleMania's history. But at the absolute epicenter of the entire 5-year run stood one man, Roman Reigns. Long before he became the undisputed tribal chief, Roman was the ultimate lightning rod for the company. Week after week, alongside workhorses like Seth Rollins, he went out and performed in front of completely divided fan base that showered him with a mixed passionate cheers and defying boos. The biggest hurdle of the modern era was its heavy corporate hand. While the roster was arguably the deepest and the most athletic gifted in the history of the business, the creative direction often felt frustratingly overproduced. Promos felt overscripted, and storyline could sometimes feel formulaic and repetitive. So while the modern era deserved credit for its incredible talent, historic women's division, and the foundation it laid for the WWE's future success, its creative inconsistencies prevent it from reaching A tier. That's why I'm placing the modern era in B tier, a good era with great moments, but not one of the WWE's all-time best. Now we are talking about the very ground beneath our feet, the era we are actively living through right now, the Renaissance era, a brand new chapter in mid-2022. This period is universally known among fans as the Triple H era. After years of feeling like the creative direction was chaotic and unpredictable in all the wrong ways, a massive backstage shakeup changed everything, focusing heavily on long-term storytelling, deep character logic, and rewarding fans for paying close attention. The undisputed anchor of this entire movement has been the historic cinematic masterpiece known as the Bloodline saga. Driven by Roman Reigns' legendary run as the undisputed champion, WWE captured lightning in a bottle. Alongside Roman, we witnessed the deeply emotional multi-year redemption arc of Cody Rhodes finishing this story. The beauty of this era is how incredibly deep the roster runs. We have seen the meteoric rise of the megastar like LA Knight, the terrifying dominance of Rhea Ripley, the hard-hitting excellence of Gunther, and the incredible solo journey of main event Jey Uso. Not to mention massive shakeups like the transition over to Netflix. But if we are being completely honest, it hasn't been a perfect ride. This era severely struggled to find its footing during the build-up to the previous two WrestleManias, where injuries, sudden creative swerves, and backstage uncertainty threatened to derail the whole product. The commitment to ultra-long-form storytelling can also feel like a grueling slow burn when champions only defend their title on rare occasion, or when a storyline gets stretched just a few months too long to hit a major stadium event. The weekly pacing can hit a massive speed bump because we all are still actively living through it. I am breaking the rule and leaving this placement entirely up to you. Now look, wrestling fans are different breed. We all are notoriously passionate, and no two people ever view the business exactly the same way. That's the beauty. So there's a massive chance your personal list looks completely different from mine. Did I rank your childhood favorite too low? Is there an era you think is widely overrated? Let's settle it in the comments. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. And I will see you in the next one. Until then, keep wrestling!